We don't typically think about spying going on in this country, but the headlines in Montreal, Chinese spy. Faith Goldie joins us on this story. You should probably give us a background on this story, too.
Certainly. I'm calling it CDS espionage because one man, Mr. Wang from Montreal, described as a mild-mannered man, has now been accused alongside 5 others, and it's on the FBI's, this gentleman here, on the FBI's wanted list. Why? Because, allegedly, there have been over 42 boxes found from FedEx shipments and so on, in connection with this man and 5 others that seem to have been exporting corn seed from Midwest U.S., Iowa, Illinois, Idaho, these sorts of places that are rich in farming.
Genetically modified corn.
That's exactly it. Now, genetically modified just meaning basically that it's been mutated to help withstand the elements more and so on and so forth. Why does this matter? Look, patent wars have been going on since the airplane and Alexander Graham Bell's telephone. But China right now is an emerging, growing market. You know better than anyone. They have leased hundreds, if not thousands, of acres of African land, and they have, which folks are speculating they're going to be using to feed their own population, possibly for export. But they also have a farming industry in China, which, I mean, they got 300 million farmers. That's 10 times the size of our entire population here in Canada. It's a pretty big market. But the problem is that because it's more so a closed market, a lot of farmers don't know what demands are. So what they see is about 25% of crops thrown out, vegetables and fruits and the like, thrown out rather than being used. And compare that to any other industrial nation, it's 5% loss as opposed to 25. So there's a margin that they need to make up with and grow as well. So that's why this whole espionage in our own backyard becomes topical and a little bit concerning.
And that's why corn is important too, because you can feed masses, you can store it for longer periods of time, yada, yada, yada. Now, how'd they find him?
Well, they haven't yet found him, which is a little bit of the issue. He's still wanted. He has dual citizenship, so he's Canadian and Chinese, educated in Montreal University. He's a pharmacist and the rest of it. But the way that they found him was through phone calls, which look rather suspicious, saying that, you know, we'll be treated as spies based on what we're doing. There's a connection to Chinese farming industries, alongside these other 5 guys who were all positioned in the U.S. Now, this isn't without a little bit of comedy too. I know I shouldn't be laughing at Chinese espionage in our own backyard. However, there were phone calls placed to FBI investigators, and what they did is they basically found these guys, you know, kneeling in cornfields, picking seeds out of the ground, and the rest of it. And they said, you know, what are you guys doing? Oh, we're just going to an agricultural show, so on and so forth. They track the parcels, and there's kilos upon kilos of seeds that are all properly labeled going to Chinese farming industries.
You know what the irony is? When you drive along any kind of a farm field, there's usually signs at the end of the rows, and it says, you know, DeKalb, crop number 487, so they tell you exactly what that brand of corn is in that aisle or on that particular field. So and they knew what they were grabbing.
I have trouble believing that the Chinese are, you know, without the ability to figure out GMO corn, but perhaps it just means, you know, getting the best bang for their buck. And let's be very clear that should these sorts of patented GMO corns be leaked to the Chinese, it would mean about $30 million loss for the U.S. farmers in question. So it's not without a huge price tag, which obviously raises a suspicion and helps us to understand where the Chinese are coming from.
You know, and I watched a TV show called The Americans that is about Russian spies back in the 60s and 70s. You don't think that that stuff still goes on, but it does. And this guy has been in Canada for a while. And
I should mention, actually, just today, Russian foreign minister actually signed a pact with the Chinese to start a new agricultural commission that would meet no less than once a year. And so, you know, with all the developments going on in Eastern Europe right now, it has helped to feed these old Cold War sentiments. And when we see a building of alliances, not only militarily performing exercises and so on and so forth, but also within the market in these sorts of agricultural entanglements between, you know, the old Eastern Bloc forces, you might say that the era is dead and gone, but are we having some sort of a renaissance?
History always repeats itself, just with a different tune. Faith, thanks so much.
Thank you, Pat.
Faith Goldie.